Pomegranate. A single pomegranate can contain up to 1,400 seeds, and nearly every edible part of the fruit is actually one of them. The pomegranate is one of the oldest cultivated fruits on Earth. A tough red shell packed with hundreds of jewel-like seeds. Those ruby-colored arils burst with sweet tart juice, while the crunchy seed inside adds texture. The experience is completely different from biting into a typical fruit. Pomegranates were already being cultivated over 4,000 years ago. Ancient Persian, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman societies all prized them. A single fruit can contain between 600 and 1,400 seeds, depending on the variety. Nature practically designed it to symbolize abundance. And it did. In many cultures, pomegranates became symbols of fertility, prosperity, and immortality. Here's something most people never connect. The word grenade, as in the weapon, actually comes from the pomegranate. French soldiers in the 1500s named the exploding shell after the fruit, because early grenades were roughly the same size and shape, packed with fragments the way a pomegranate is packed with seeds. So the next time someone says grenade, they're unknowingly referencing a fruit that's been feeding people for 4,000 years. But while pomegranates became symbols of life, the next fruit became famous for a story that probably never happened. Cherry. Cherries are small stone fruits known for their bright sweetness and deep red color. Their flavor balances sugar and acidity better than almost any other fruit. But the most famous cherry story isn't about flavor, it's about honesty. Generations of Americans grew up hearing that a young George Washington chopped down a cherry tree and admitted it, saying he could not tell a lie. The problem? The story was completely invented by a biographer named Mason Locke Weems, 5 years after Washington's death. Yet millions still believe it. Real cherry history is actually more fascinating. Wild cherries were eaten across Europe and Asia for thousands of years before agriculture even existed. And today, some cherry orchards use helicopters during frost season. The moving air prevents blossoms from freezing. Protecting fruit with aircraft. Cherries also hide a lesser-known detail. Their pits contain a compound called amygdalin, which can break down into cyanide if crushed and eaten in large quantities. Swallowing a whole pit by accident is generally harmless. It passes through the body undigested. But chewing up a large number of pits is genuinely dangerous. It's the same compound found in apple seeds and apricot kernels. But cherries aren't the only fruit that behaves strangely. The next one literally bounces. Cranberry. Cranberries are among the most unusual fruits in commercial agriculture. Tart, firm, and packed with natural acidity. Most people know them from juice or holiday dinners. But here's the strange part. Farmers can test cranberry quality by bouncing them. A ripe cranberry contains tiny air pockets. When dropped, quality berries bounce surprisingly high. For decades, cranberry sorting machines used this principle. The fruit essentially passed a basketball test before reaching consumers. Native peoples of North America used cranberries long before European settlers arrived. They mixed them into pemmican, a high-energy food that could last for months. Cranberries are also often cited alongside just two other fruits, the blueberry and the Concord grape, as being among the only fruits native to North America that are grown commercially today. Nearly everything else on a produce shelf, from apples to oranges to bananas, originally came from somewhere else in the world and was brought to the continent later. Not bad for a fruit many people only eat once a year. And speaking of surprising origins, the next fruit wasn't always red. Not even close. Watermelon today. Watermelon feels like the definition of summer. Sweet, juicy, bright red. But ancient watermelons looked completely different. Early varieties grown in Africa often had pale flesh and much less sweetness. Some were grown primarily for water rather than flavor. People were essentially carrying giant natural water bottles across dry landscapes. Over centuries, farmers selectively bred watermelons for sweetness, color, and texture. Modern watermelon can contain over 90% water, making it one of the most hydrating fruits on Earth. Most watermelons sold in grocery stores today are also seedless, though that's a bit of a misnomer. Seedless watermelons are bred by crossing two different chromosome varieties to produce a fruit that can't form mature seeds, not through genetic modification. It's one of the reasons the watermelon in your fridge looks almost nothing like the pale, seed-packed fruit our ancestors once carried across the desert. But the next fruit is tiny, yet it can completely alter the way food tastes, for up to 2 hours. Miracle berry. The miracle berry might be the strangest fruit on this list. Small, red, almost forgettable, until you eat it. The berry contains a glycoprotein called miraculin. For anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, sour foods begin tasting intensely sweet. Lemons taste like lemonade. Limes seem sugary. Even vinegar becomes surprisingly pleasant. Nothing about the food changes, only your perception changes. Here's how it works. Miraculin binds to sweet taste receptors on the tongue, but stays inactive at neutral pH. The moment you eat something acidic, the drop in pH triggers a conformational change. The miraculin receptor complex activates, and your brain interprets sour as sweet. The fruit originally comes from West Africa, where it's been used for generations to make sour foods more palatable. In the 1970s, an American company tried to turn it into a mainstream sugar substitute. Then the FDA stepped in. Instead of approving it as a food additive, regulators classified it in a way that made commercial use nearly impossible, even though the fruit itself was never banned. Some believe the sugar industry played a role in that decision, though this has never been proven. Today, miracle berry tablets are legally sold in the US as dietary supplements, and they've become the centerpiece of so-called flavor tripping parties, where people eat the berry and then try the sourest foods they can find, just to experience the effect. Scientists have studied this for decades. The effect gradually fades as saliva breaks down the bond between miraculin and the taste receptors. Few fruits can claim they change reality. This one comes remarkably close. But if miracle berries are unusual, the next fruit breaks a completely different rule. Strawberry. Strawberries are among the most popular fruits in the world, yet botanically, they are bizarre. Most fruits keep their seeds inside. Strawberries wear theirs on the outside. Those tiny specks covering the surface? Each one is actually an individual fruit, a botanical structure called an achene. The red flesh itself isn't technically the fruit at all. It's a swollen support structure called a receptacle. Nature took the normal blueprint and flipped it upside down. What most people don't realize is that the modern strawberry is a relatively recent invention. It emerged from accidental hybridization in Europe only a few centuries ago, when two wild species from opposite sides of the Americas were planted near each other, and bees did the rest. One parent came from North America, the other from Chile, and neither one looks much like the strawberry we know today. Sometimes the most familiar foods are surprisingly new, and the next fruit proves that color itself can depend on the weather. Blood orange. Blood oranges look ordinary from the outside. Then you cut one open. The flesh ranges from crimson to nearly purple. It looks more like a gemstone than citrus. The dramatic color comes from anthocyanins, the same pigments found in blueberries and red grapes. But here's the twist. Blood oranges develop their signature color only when cool nights meet warm days. Without those temperature swings, the fruit may never turn red at all. That's part of why Sicily, with its volcanic soil and dramatic day-night temperature shifts near Mount Etna, produces some of the most famous blood oranges in the world. The flavor follows the same pattern. Sweet citrus notes blend with hints of berry and raspberry, almost like two fruits combined into one. And speaking of unexpected combinations, the next fruit looks familiar, but tastes completely different from anything most people expect. Red banana. Most people have never seen a red banana, yet they exist, and they challenge everything people think bananas should taste like. Their skin develops a reddish-purple hue. The flesh is softer and creamier than common yellow bananas. Many people describe the flavor as banana mixed with raspberry, or sometimes banana mixed with vanilla. Unlike the Cavendish banana that dominates supermarkets, red bananas bruise more easily during transportation, which is a big part of why they rarely make it to grocery store shelves outside the regions where they're grown. It's a reminder that supermarket shelves show only a tiny fraction of the fruit world, and the next fruit almost disappeared from that world entirely. Red currant. Red currants are small, translucent berries that almost glow in sunlight, intensely tart, far sharper than strawberries or cherries. For centuries, they were staples across Europe, in jams, sauces, pastries, and desserts. But in America, red currants had a very different story. In 1911, the US federal government banned the growing of currants across the entire country. Not because they were dangerous to eat, because the timber industry wanted them gone. Red and black currants were an intermediate host for a fungal disease called white pine blister rust, a pathogen that threatened the logging industry's most valuable trees. Timber lobbyists pressured Congress. The ban passed. At its peak, the eradication effort employed over 8,600 paid workers, teachers and college students on summer break, sent into forests to rip currant plants out by hand or douse them with salt and borax. The program ran until World War II redirected the resources. The federal ban was finally lifted in 1966. Some state restrictions remain to this day. A fruit that was once a beloved American staple became collateral damage in a battle between a berry and the logging industry. Not many fruits can claim that. But our final fruit has a history that stretches back thousands of years and continues influencing global health trends today. Goji berry. Goji berries are small red fruits native to Asia. Their flavor sits somewhere between cranberry, tomato, and raisin, an unusual combination that makes them instantly recognizable, and it's not a coincidence. Goji berries actually belong to the nightshade family, the same botanical family as tomatoes, potatoes, and peppers. That's why the tomato comparison isn't just a casual observation. Botanically, they're relatives. For centuries, they appeared in traditional Chinese cuisine and herbal practices. Stories surrounding them became so exaggerated that some people began treating them almost like mythical foods. But the most fascinating part isn't the mythology, it's the journey. A humble regional fruit became a global wellness symbol within just a few decades, from remote growing regions to supermarket shelves around the world. And despite all the marketing, the most interesting thing remains the fruit itself. A tiny red berry related to the tomato in your kitchen that spent centuries largely unnoticed before suddenly becoming one of the most recognized fruits on the planet.